All right, we're live, Joan.
We are live, everyone. Oh my God, I am just so excited to welcome you all to tonight's actual online astrology panel, which is the first of our Cosmic Revelation series. We're live with Portal to Ascension. And so I'm just really excited to share this with you. And I want to tell you a little bit about Portal to Ascension before we get too much further into everything. So Portal to Ascension is an online streaming platform where we have conscious events, including tonight's Cosmic Revelations, but also we have other events on consciousness. We have upcoming an empath's guide to the galaxy, paranormal magic, ancient folklore, feast day of Mary Magdalene, hybrids. We have a big hybrid conference coming up too, as well as our up and coming Cosmic Revelations series. So tonight, guys, you're all on the summit. We're really excited to have you. This is the launch of our very first 7-week astrology series, Cosmic Revelations, Astrology and You. And you're going to hear 7 of our panelists, and each panelist is going to be doing their own event over the next 7 weeks after this. So tonight is a really good chance to meet them. We're really happy to share all that with you. So I'm about good. Yeah, so we're just really excited to share this with you. I want to tell you a little bit about how the event came to be and Shima Moore, who happens to be one of my very, very dear friends. Shima was visiting my house after Conscious Life Expo, and we were just brainstorming life, and somehow Neil's on the phone too. And Neil starts talking to Shima about putting together this event. And it turned out to be far better, far greater than we even imagined. But Shima, who besides being a dear friend of mine, is known as your astrology curator. Her specialty is bringing the best of the best astrologers. So she's a creatrix. She's the host of tonight's Cosmic Revelations, Exploring You and the Universe, a 7-episode series with 7 of the best astrologers. So Shima is a metaphysical educator and community events organizer who utilizes ancient and modern wisdom along with celestial insights to integrate body, mind, and spirit through the 5D star portal. As an astrological educator, researcher, and student for more than 40 years, she finds great satisfaction in awakening those who may not yet realize how helpful real astrology can be in their lives, as well as in supporting those who already love astrology to enjoy a more expanded point of view. She's the co-founder of the LA Conscious Life Expo, Perceptions Magazine, Rainbow Grocery and General Store in San Francisco. She's the creatress of Dance, Transfusion, Moon Manifestation Magic, 10 Days to Ageless Vitality Master Cleanse, and Shima Metaphysics and More Radio. She joyfully facilitates Bulgarian master Peter Dunov's Pan-Eurythmy Sacred Dance, uniting heaven and earth, and Stargate 12th dimensional activations and meditations. So I'm just really happy to bring Shima on. She'll introduce the rest of the panel and get us started. Welcome. I'm happy to see you.
Yay. Well, Joan, thank you. Oh my God. It's a wonderful thing about life, isn't it? I mean, it's just kind of like having all these cycles. You get to do a lot of things. And it's like, it's always amazing to see them kind of enumerated. So it's so wonderful to be here. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Joan. Thank you to all my wonderful astrologers who have just kind of so enthusiastically decided to join us, responding to my invitation. I love it. I want to welcome each and every one of you who have come to join us today for our summit, our prequel to Cosmic Revelations, Astrology, You, and the Universe. I really wanted to take the word universe and put you in it. And that's how that sort of like came about. I am your astrology curator, and inviting 7 best of the best. Neil said, how about a 7-episode series? I thought, oh, 7, great, the 7 traditional planets. And it just kind of like, that's how it started. Well, next week, we officially begin the Cosmic Revelation series, Wednesday, July 6th from 4 to 5:30 Pacific time, so adjusted to your time zones. It's going to run every Wednesday through August 17th. And so you're going to get to meet each and every one of our astrologers today. And remember, when you sign up for the series, you get to tune in to the episode whenever you like and as often as you like. So you can really take it at your own speed. So as I mentioned, I'm honored to have been invited here by Neil at Portal to Ascension to be the creatrix and host of what I hope will be an enlightening series. And so whether you're brand new to astrology or you've been steeped in its wisdom for years or like decades, like many of us have been, it is my intention to that you leave feeling inspired and uplifted by the revelation that astrology is, and it always has played an important part in our lives since the beginning of time, whether or not we've been aware of it. And because most of the time it's been behind the scenes. And I know many of us have heard the expression, there are no accidents. So you are here today for a reason. And as each of our 7 handpicked world-renowned teachers are here as well. And in fact, now more than ever, astrology is widely sought and fortunately more available. So it's here for a reason, because at this time, more people are seeking answers. Now, I remember way back in high school, which is a long time ago, where across the entrance to the school was one of these: ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, or knock and the door will be open to you. And I have been asking and seeking and knocking for more than 40 years. And you know what I found? A truly magical facet of astrology that I don't think most people are really aware of. And that is that by tuning into its many cycles, we really can totally shift our attitude towards aging, from that of resistance to that of appreciation and discovery of the excitement in unraveling the many cycles of our lives. And with that being said, be sure to stay tuned into the end of today's summit so that we can point you perhaps to some free, in the direction of some free resources, and also how you can access this Cosmic Revelation series itself. So let's take a moment and really get here, because I know for some of us, we had to get up early. For others, we rushed to try to find out, oh, where's the link? And so let's just take a moment and just start with taking a nice breath and just kind of grounding ourselves, tuning into Mother Earth, feeling the energy of the earth coming up into our bodies, feeling the energy of the sky, Father Sky, the heavens, feeling the sun, the moon, the new moon and the sun together, the planets, and all the energy that they transmit to us, so that we can decipher their messages and their guideposts along the way. And that we're in such a profound time of transition and transformation on our planet makes our summit today, now, this week, and our upcoming 7-episode series that much more relevant to all of us. Because this is an opportunity for each of us to tune into the what and the why of what the heck is going on from a more expansive place, a more heavenly, cosmic, divine perspective. And we're going to do that with 7 best of the best guides. And I have no doubt that each of us will receive some level of wisdom today, not only from the interactions with the planets above, but also with one another. And I've long held on to that understanding of Zen masters in approaching life with a beginner's mind, open to the limitlessness of possibilities and fresh perspectives. And I want to invite each one of you to be open and receptive as well. We have a lot in store for you today. As I mentioned earlier, this summit is a prequel to the 7-episode Cosmic Revelation series, where we will really feature a deep dive with each of the astrologer in their wisdom keeping that they do. But today I wanted to share with you each one of them with you, so that if you don't already know them and their amazing work that they do, you can meet them during our summit today. So let me introduce each of them to you in order of their sequence of their episodes on the series. And then we can find out more about the who, what, and why of what's going on in our lives and on the planets. And since we are live, perhaps we'll see if we have time for questions today at the end. And if we don't, you can actually send them to me at shimadivina@gmail.com or to Portal to Ascension. And we'll see if we can't get them individually answered for you during the summit itself. So I'm pleased to introduce to you our very first of the best of best astrologers, who will be here next Wednesday, July 6th, week 1 of our Cosmic Revelations series. And I'm going to give everyone a little chance a little later to tell you a bit about what they're going to share with you during our special time together in the series. But for right now, I just want to introduce someone whose work online, whose information I have transcribed, I have shared on your astrology curator that I do on Facebook. And she's somebody who just, her intuition and her sense of astrology has just inspired me for years. She's an intuitive astrologer, a modern consciousness teacher who has hosted a successful astrology podcast for over 4 million downloads since 2012. Molly McCord. She's published 11 books, including her bestseller, Awakening Astrology, which I happen to have right here. 5 Keys to Planetary Energies for Personal Transformation. And again, you're going to read a lot more about her on the Cosmic Revelation series page, but I want to introduce you to everyone today and give enough time to share. So Molly, welcome, welcome, welcome. I was so delighted when you decided to join us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Shima. It's an honor to be amongst all these world-renowned astrologers. I'm so delighted to be here, and I'm excited about what we're going to talk about, the big energies. So thank you. This is wonderful.
Thank you. Yes. And so next week, we'll really get to really dive deep with Molly, and she'll tell you a little bit later about what she's going to be talking about. And I think it's the perfect beginning to the series. And the following week, let's see, do we have our, oh, and there he is, David. I knew you would pop in there. David, so on July 13th, week 2, I have the pleasure of sharing someone who I've come to love over the last few years. He's such a sweetie. He has got his, anyway, I'll tell you about him. He's been on my panels at the Los Angeles Conscious Life Expo live and during when we had online things because of the whole lockdown situation. But David Lawrence Palmer, also known as the Leo King, is a world famous celebrity astrologer and has a reputation as the go-to spiritual influencer around the world. He's the founder of High Vibe TV, an electronic DJ of spiritual dance music, an international jet ski boating racing professional who recently won, I believe, first place in a racing event, and is setting trends and disrupting OTT, over the top media markets and content, with content that is exciting, cutting edge, and somewhat controversial. David, thank you for being with us today.
I'm so happy to be with you all. I love everybody here, and everybody, I think, coming together at this time is so important because there's so much unification that we all have to do. And that's what astrology is. It's how we unify so much that we see up in the cosmos and bring it down here. And I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you, honey. Thank you for coming. And week 3, we have someone who I became acquainted with because of her interview with another one of our astrologers who can't be here today because she's in the process of moving from country to country, which that's a big thing. I wouldn't want to be going through that myself right now. But I loved her interview, and I've since listened to many of her talks online, and I always say, I think with Heather, she could talk about the most challenging thing that you would ever deal with, but she does it in such a way that it's so compassionate and soft and loving that you'd be okay with listening to it. So Heather Ensworth is a PhD, a clinical psychologist with more than 35 years experience. She's an internationally known practicing astrologer, author, shamanic practitioner who has studied ancient and indigenous healing traditions with many teachers and shamans. She's worked in sacred circles for women for more than 20 years and strongly believes that to truly heal ourselves and support the healing of the earth, we need to be in right relationship with ourselves, with each other, with the earth, and with all of life. Heather, welcome to Cosmic Revelations.
Thank you, Shima, and it's great to be a part of this with all of you. I have a lot of respect for everyone here. And this is such a profound time that we're in. And I think astrology is such a gift in helping us to understand individually what we're dealing with in these times and to really understand collectively what we're moving through. So it's profound to be part of this with all of you.
Well, we're so happy to have you. Thank you so much. Okay, and week number 4, July 27th, we have Tom Jacobs, an evolutionary astrologer, energy worker, channel, medium who works with the ascended master Tahuti, also known as Hermes, Thoth, Saint Germain, Merlin, and Archangel Metatron. He supports people to come out of pain and powerlessness in accepting compassion and empowerment, and even offers a healing suicide.com site. He's published 17 books, 3 original natal chart reports, including Lilith and Chiron, and numerous home study healing astrology courses and tutoring. Tom, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for your invitation. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, and I discovered, I met Tom when several years ago, I thought my birth time had changed and everything, it changed the placement. You'll find out a little bit more about that as we go along through the series, but according to the timing of our birth is so important. Just changing it by an hour shifted where all my planets were. And I was a little like, about that. And I happened to stumble upon Tom, and I just loved his point of view on things. And so I started exploring more of what he did. So I'm delighted to have you here, Tom. Thanks for joining us. And on week 5 is August 3rd. And as I mentioned earlier, Barbara Han-Clow is in the process of moving from Canada back to the United States. And so she's literally in the process of doing that today. But we do have a recorded, pre-recorded interview that I did with her. But let me just tell you a little bit about her first. Barbara Han-Clow is an internationally acclaimed ceremonial teacher. She's a Mayan calendar researcher, the author of 15 nonfiction books, including Chiron, The Rainbow Bridge, The Pleiadian Agenda, Awakening the Planetary Mind, and the Mayan Code. While an acquisitions editor for Bear & Company for 29 years, she taught at sacred sites globally. And when she saw the imminent global breakdown coming back in 2011, when she saw it happening in 2021, she shifted into fiction writing with a Revelations trilogy, which explores the world breakdown after the end of the Mayan calendar in 2012 and through the pandemic as it was happening. And I'm on my 3rd reading. I'm on my 2nd reading, just started the 3rd book, and it's just great. So it's really exciting to have fiction that by somebody who you know is talking about. It's called content fiction, evidently, she shares with me. So maybe we'll bring her on, Joan, in after we introduce everyone. Okay, week 6, August 10th. one of my favorite people on the planet, and the very first astrologer that I ever had a reading with back in 1992. And it was a gift. Somebody gave it to me as a gift. And it was like, wow, so really so wonderful. Daniel Giamario is co-founder of Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, the creator of the Shamanic Astrology Paradigm, which began after a vision quest experience on Mount Shasta in 1981. I live in Mount Shasta, so that is like a really lovely coincidence. The Giamario approach combines an academic background in comparative philosophy and religion, teaching meditation for two worldwide organizations, Dane Rudyard's humanistic and transpersonal astrology movement through the 70s, and lots of travel. And he combined all of that into earth-centered astrology, connecting the night sky at secluded locations and sacred sites in an as above, so below direct experience. And I had the good fortune of being with Daniel at a intensive, the 2017, when we had the Great American Eclipse. And I got to be out there with him. And what an experience it is to be under the sky and to really tune into the shifting of the poles and just the Milky Way and just where everything is. And this is Daniel's, a new edition. I have the very first edition, spiral bound copy of it as well, the Shamanic Astrology Handbook. So Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for inviting me, Shima. Great to be here with this amazing group of people and to be able to have these conversations. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And you know what's so amazing is that it is such an amazing group of people, and not everyone has met each other before. So, I hope that people have a chance to even interact, between yourselves if there's something that you're curious about with one another. I invite you to do that. There's so much more brilliance that all these astrology consultants and researchers that you can read somewhat about on Portal to Ascension website. And of course, we'll reveal lots more through the series itself. So I do hope you'll get to join us. And we're winding down now to our last, and definitely not our least, of our tireless luminaries of our series. And our series concludes on week number 7, August 17th, with world-renowned scholar, award-winning astrologer, and author, Rick Levine. Rick's a widely respected voice in the global astrology community. And I hear he's rumored to have been initiated in astrology studies by Pythagoras himself. Rick has a special gift for bridging gaps between astrology and spirituality, science and religion, the head and the heart. He's a founding member of the Kepler College Board of Trustees, co-founder of IQ.com, and co-authored 8 editions of Barnes & Noble's annual Your Astrology Guide. He's been awarded prestigious awards internationally. Tens of thousands of new and seasoned astrologers from around the world watch, read, or listen to him daily, weekly, or monthly on YouTube, Instagram, and his Cosmic Connection talks on Astrology Hub. Rick, thanks so much for being with us here today. Can I hear you? Can we hear you?
There we go. I wasn't playing hard to get, honest. Jupiter's in Aries. How can anyone play hard to get? It's great being here. What a fun party. I wouldn't have wanted to miss this for anything. I could say lovely things about everyone here that I know, and some I know better, but you've already said them. And so thanks for including me.
It's so wonderful to have you here. It's so wonderful to have each and every one of you here. I can't tell you, when I was like going through the introductions, it filled me up so much just to have you all in one spot. It's really an honor. So I'm going to start off by really kind of like putting out sort of like popcorn style. We'll see how that goes. And we have about an hour and a half left. And there are 6 of us, plus like the 12-minute conversation with Barbara Hand-Clow, and maybe Joan, maybe we'll start with that because Barbara's not here today. And so if you could roll that in, that I think that would be a great way to start. So I want you to meet her. I know many of you have. I was surprised really how many times Alan Steinfeld has introduced, because he's known Barbara Hand Cloud for many years. I think most of us have. I think most of us have one or more of her books on our bookshelf. So here we go. Thank you, Joan. Okay, well, how exciting. Our next speaker today is unable to be with us live. She's in the process of moving, and we all know how monumental that is. But I'm so happy to have had an opportunity to just kind of like touch base with her and to introduce you to her, because I know not everyone, although many of you will, not all of you know her yet. So I'm so excited. Author, astrologer, ceremonial leader, who has her recent trilogy has predicted the crack in reality that we're all experiencing. So Barbara Hand Cloud, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today and to introduce you to our Cosmic Revelations audience. I know some people, as I said, know your work or know some of it because it's voluminous, and some have no idea. So I want to let people know how important you are to this discussion, and that they're going to want to join us when we get together for our full-length conversation. So Barbara, welcome.
Thank you. Well, good to meet with you, Shima.
Yes, it's a pleasure. We've been leapfrogging through the years. I remember back when you had Bear Company in the early days of it. I had Perception magazine back then, and I used to review some of your books.
Oh my!
And
come to think of it, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yes, and so that's I think how I first might have been introduced. Although I know I did get, I remember Chiron, the Rainbow Bridge, and I remember Pleiadian Agenda back from then. And more recently, I think I've mentioned to you, I've started reading your trilogies, and I'm in the second reading of it. I found it so exciting. And I was listening to an interview that you did, and you mentioned that astrology was what inspired you to actually start on them. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. And having been a publisher, I knew that the deadliest thing I could do to my career was to switch into fiction after having had popular nonfiction books. And as a matter of fact, a lot of my fans abandoned me on the first two books, and now third book is really taking off. And then people are reading it and then going back and picking up the other ones. So that seems to have straightened itself out, because I feel like this trilogy is really important. And the reason I feel it's important is what fiction gives you that you can't get in nonfiction is the ability to imagine reality through the characters. And if the characters are interesting to you, and in that case, this book is very limited and from one point of view, because it's all about master alchemists, master astrologers, great artists, great lovers. It's all about Renaissance. All the characters are like Renaissance characters, really. So let's see, I lost my train of thought. So fiction gives you that opportunity to see it through the lives and imaginations of the characters themselves, and it enables you to imprint material in a very powerful way. If you think about it, some of the history books you've read about, say, about English history or something, the reason you remember different parts of English history is because of all those stories about all of the kings and queens during those periods. And so I wanted to use fiction in order to carry the field that we're working with, which is basically astrology, out to a much larger audience. And fortunately, that seems to be happening. I'm happy to announce now. Up until this year, I couldn't have said that, because I want to see this be a movie, because these characters are wonderful people. And my characters in some ways are more fun than a lot of the people who are around me, because it gives your imagination the chance to fly.
Well, you've done a fabulous job on it. I just love it. It makes me want to, I want to go to Italy now and just kind of like explore all the places that you talk about there. And I know after I read the first couple of, I've read them all, and I'm on my second reading of them. And I love the fact that in some ways it's, fiction, because I'm so into nonfiction things.
Me too, yeah.
And so this makes it fun because it's not just fiction. It's fiction from somebody with a background that I respect and I know, oh my gosh, this is important. This is important. So my second reading I'm going through and I'm underlining because I want to explore this more. And in reading your other books, I had mentioned to you earlier that I'm also reading, your book, Awakening the Planetary Mind, which I think was based on Catastrophobia, the first printing of it.
Right. Yeah.
And it's fascinating the weaving that you've done with the book. So, bringing together the fiction, bringing together historical, bringing together the art. And you had mentioned, I know in one of your interviews you talked about, and certainly in the trilogy, you talk a lot about uh, the Medici family.
Medici.
Yes.
Right.
And the Vatican and what's going on there, and information that's so relevant and current to what's happening, and really getting to the core of it, and then tying it in with the cycles and the sacred sites. And it's just fantastic. And I recommend it to everyone to really check out, because it's a joyous, it's a, exciting journey, and it's revelatory. It really is revelatory.
It's revelatory, yeah. And this is called content fiction. And so the reason that, the person I'm the most grateful to is Dan Brown, because Dan Brown is the one who broke down the New York publishing lock on content fiction. Fiction was all supposed to be imaginary and ironic and kind of dismissive. And so all of us just stopped reading it. I read fiction from 1800 to 1940, and that was it, but we've got our fiction back. And there are other writers besides me and Dan Brown who are doing this, because content fiction enables you to be in the context of the times that your characters are living in. And if you're not giving the reader the background on what was going on while those characters were experiencing whatever they're experiencing, it's just extremely limited, So this is also bringing the sense of our background back. And we need. And sacred sites also. The sacred sites I taught all over the world at sacred sites for 20 years. And if you really want to really turn yourself on and activate your energy, go to the sacred sites. And so in this book, the characters are involved with sacred sites also.
It's just really, as I say, it really makes me want to, journey. It may not be the time, on the planet these days to do that so much, although hopefully that's all opening up for us. But, boy, it will definitely whet your appetite with wanting to do that. And I look through the years to see these places that I visited, not in full awareness. I mean, sacred sites, not really knowing. And right now I live in Manchester, California. So I've sort of like situated myself at a place that is, so energetic and full, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really delighted. And it was like, it just pulled me here, and I just love the mountains. So it's, it's an interesting thing to experience. And you are being pulled back to, the US, where you've been out of here for a while. And how do you feel to come back?
We're dual American Canadians, double citizenship. And because we won't be vaccinated, and our kids aren't, and our grandchildren aren't, the whole family will not vaccinate.
Hmm. Okay, well, there seems to be a little bit of a snafu there, but that's what happens. Joan, why don't you cut that off? Great. All right. Well, thank you for your patience. I'm not sure what happened there to the sound, but it seemed like I didn't know if it was coming on. But Barbara Hanclow, there she is. And I hope you get to join us because, whoa, her work is really quite amazing. And so, welcome back, everyone. Yay. So on the summit today, we're going to have, we don't have that much time. So I'd like you each to, we're going to do this popcorn style to see what you feel is most important. Here we are at the halfway point of 2022. What's most important to look at now, what we've been through, maybe the most essential things to be aware of, to look out for the rest of the year. And perhaps a look at a glimmer past these early years of the roaring 2020s. And then we'll get to look a little bit about what you're going to be talking about. I'm sure these are things that people are most interested in. So who'd like to start off? Rick, I see you're lit up there. No, we got to. Anyone raise your hand? Oh, he can't hear me. Can you hear me? I hope. Heather. Okay, there you go. All right. And then Daniel.
Yeah, I'll start. I think this is just such a profound time that we're in. One of my strong areas of interest is the larger cycles that we go through in terms of shifts in human consciousness with the precessional cycle. And I think it's very profoundly significant that we're moving into that age of Aquarius. And my sense is that we'll really cross the threshold more fully into that when Pluto moves fully into Aquarius November 2024. So I feel like we're in a very turbulent time as we're in that transition. And one of the planetary configurations that I feel is most important right now is Uranus conjunct the North Node and Uranus in the ongoing square with Saturn, really representing that tension between those who are trying to cling to the old forms and the old paradigms, and Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, calling us into these new forms, new ways of being. So I think it's very profound that that's guiding us in this transition time. And I think it's also significant that in their cycle together, Uranus and Saturn started this 44-year cycle that we're in 1988, a year after the harmonic convergence. And at that time, Uranus and Saturn were in alignment with the galactic center. And we're now 3/4 of the way through that cycle. It's the time of the cycle that is about a crisis in consciousness. How are we shifting our human awareness and our consciousness? And this cycle will end and begin a new cycle in 2032. And one of the ways I'm fascinated with astrology is with visual astrology. At that time, Uranus and Saturn will be in the sky at the upraised arm of Orion. And I think it's very symbolic of this kind of death rebirth we're in terms of our consciousness and the shift, not only from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, but the end of a precessional cycle into a new one. So it's a profound time to be on the planet.
That is definitely true. And I know some of our other speakers speak to that as well. And for those listeners that we have that maybe aren't so steeped in astrology as we are, I know some of these we've all heard the age of Aquarius. We heard it since hair back in the day in the 60s. And we think, well, gosh, hasn't it happened yet? Well, when we really take the camera way back and we look at the cycles of things and how long there's this 26,000 year cycles that I know many of us are not even aware of, have never even heard of. But, you know, the thing that I love so much about astrology is it's so exciting to discover things like this, what we're in. We are like in like the greatest exciting adventure story that you can imagine. And we're all in it and we're all playing our roles in it. But we've sort of like come into this culture that's like this, let's get it now, 30 seconds, we're happening, you know, that's TVs and all of this stuff. So we don't realize that we're in the midst of this cycle change for hundreds of years. It's happening. And what a time it is, for sure. So if some of these terms are unfamiliar to you, come back again and listen and stay with us to learn more, because there's so much. And as I said, I've been really studying astrology for many, many years, and as have many of us sitting here, and everyone else has dedicated their life to it. So there's got to be a reason. And I know for you, Heather, you shifted from doing clinical psychology as what you did to now astrology is your primary focus. And so, you know, I know a lot of us have even started perhaps as skeptics and we come to astrology. Anyone who would like to add to that, or Dave, Daniel? Yes. You have to unmute yourself.
I could very easily follow up on what Heather had to say. I'm actually, it goes all the way back into the mid 80s. I actually coined the expression, the turning of the ages. And I was inspired by Hamlet's Mill. The first account of that happened in 1969, actually, of the galactic alignment. And my first organization was the Harbingers of the Turning of the Ages, and we're now in the midst of a rebrand to our school is now going to be called the Turning of the Ages Mystery School. But to get to the main thing, in our school, we believe this great turning is from 1962 to 2034, and it includes 6 different timelines converging, including 12 times 12 precessional cycles. Which actually brings up over 300,000 years of, quote, Homo sapien history. But it also includes the 6th sun, the end of the 5th sun. It also includes the end of the Anthropocene. It includes the 2012 research of the end of Kali Yuga, which is 2025. It also includes non-astrological factors of the 4th turning. All these things weave together, and then as far as what's most important now, I'm putting so much attention on the chart of the U.S. because the centerpiece of everything, really, as far as the U.S. dominates so many things around the planet. I can certainly know that from over here in the Philippines. What is happening with the Neptune opposition and the Pluto return and the upcoming Chiron return are just hugely important, including the second exact Pluto conjunction, which is here coming up on the 11th. So on July 11th. And then the other thing I'm looking at is the lunar standstill, 2024, which also dovetails with all these other dates, 2024, 2025. And then we can throw into the mix the US Uranian return, and because if we look at all those things back to the bifurcation of the Civil War and the bifurcation right before the World War II, here we have the bifurcation in the United States again. Last but not least, I know that we don't have too much time here, The other main issue that I'm focusing on is the shadow of Aquarius, because to me, it's also Saturn in Aquarius, and it's this main symbol, if we're not careful, of technocracy and transhumanism. And that's the thing that I'm very, very much wanting to get to people's attention about. That we must alert those who are awake to that deepest descent into materialism, which is the metaverse and transhumanism. So that's I'll leave it there.
Well, we could get a lot in a short period of time. We just transcended 300,000 years. All right. So now astrology is kind of a big subject, don't you think? So that's why we're coming together at this time, because it really is important. It's not just kind of like, what sign are you? You know, it's really, it's big. It's big in our lives. So, okay. Who would like to add, share? Tom?
Yeah, so following Daniel, it makes sense to me because I'm thinking a lot about those things in the US chart, these events. But then my particular thing is, and this is just the way that I do things. I'm aware of stuff in the world, and I try to make some individual teachings that help with it. So for me, that Pluto return is huge on the Neptune opposition, because we see these things happen in our culture, even just in the news, but the last several years here in the US. And of course, I'm in the US, so that's, my focus is on stuff going on here. But we feel disempowered as a collective. So for me, whether we're talking about any of those transits, and from the USA chart that Daniel mentioned, for me, there's this amazing opportunity to teach individuals how to become empowered. And so I'm really focused on that sense of, I'm living in this culture, the fabric of which has, all these problems and issues. And then I say, okay, great. Now, how can you deal with this in your own life? So regarding the Neptune opposition and the Pluto thing and all that, I think that for me is a real driving force, because for me, one of the worst things to observe in the world, and I think this is just my Pluto and Libra and the 12th heart on my sleeve, is when people lose hope or people lose faith and don't see a way out of challenging things. So I'm finding myself right now really tuned into that Pluto return. And of course, that's going to be, as Daniel mentioned, the second exact conjunction will be in early July. But this space we're living in, like Pluto brought its bulldozers in, and we have to clean up the landscape. That will happen. That will last for several years. So that's where a lot of my focus is for the rest of the year, in teaching and counseling. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. And I mean, that is the thing. I mean, at this particular time, the Pluto energy, there's a lot of things. It's about transformation, but it's a higher energy. Things have to transform in order, it's like that, the story I'm sure most of us have heard about fires. And some seeds need the heat of the fire in order for the trees to actually grow. And so I believe we all chose to be here at this time.
Yeah. But I mean, we get overwhelmed by the fear, naturally so, but how do we work through the fear, the pain, the shadow? Yeah. So it's spend a lot of time on that stuff. And that's what my focus
and that's why I think when you get to know a bit about your chart, you can see where your strong points are. And it's kind of like, oh, it's going to rain outside. I'm going to bring my umbrella today. Or maybe I won't plan that outdoor lunch today in the park. It's supposed to have a snowstorm, So these are things that there are actually ways of dealing with them that are hopeful for everyone. I want you to know that. I mean, because I know a lot of people, when they think of astrology, they think, oh, you're going to tell me something bad about me, or in this case, about the world. And well, the reality is the reality. And there are factors that we can use to make it, a friend of mine, for instance, today sent me a text. Oh, we've got Pluto square Mars today. And and I'm looking at Jupiter and Venus today, and it's like, oh, it's a great day. And I happen to have a particular relationship with Pluto in my chart where it's a it's a great day, so we all have different perspectives. And when we know that, it's really helpful. David, what's going on? How are you doing? What would you like, anything you feel like to share?
Well, I think it was wonderful what all three just said, and especially with what Heather and Daniel said, especially about the changing of the ages is so important, I feel, for all of us to pay attention to right now. But there's a lot of questions with a lot of this Aquarius energy we've been going through for the last couple of years, even the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. We also had that Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, the Jupiter-Pluto 3 times. That was very rare to happen. Jupiter-Pluto is usually just kind of happen once, but that one happened 3 times. We hadn't seen that one for, I think it was over 50 years. So we're at a really intense moment here because I feel like what is humanity is the big question. What else is out there frequency wise? There's been so many events that have been happening. I know a lot of people like to say, oh, this is like some sort of disclosure, but really I think it's more of an uncovering of what's really going on and what are we, where are we going? Because I don't think we've actually really ever known that. And I think that humanity right now is at a place where we're reaching a peak where there has to be some sort of X factor, whether you call that planet X or whether you go into that. We're moving into so many powerful astrological alignments, including just even having the Pluto-Uranus square come back when Pluto enters into Aquarius here at the beginning of 2023, while we're still in a Saturn-Uranus square. There's definitely how to get through these fears and how to get out of these shadow parts. Like I love what Daniel brought up, because I feel like this is an important place for us to really find humanity and find a way to bridge together through the divisiveness. This Jupiter-Neptune conjunction we had in Pisces that hasn't happened since 1856 is so important. I mean, it's what led to a civil war, but I think that it's important for us to really also look at, it was when photography started coming out. We have the James Webb Telescope that's about to bring us pictures right when the Pluto return of America is going to be happening. July 11th, July 12th, we're getting the pictures. We have Comet K2. That's one of the largest comets we've ever seen that's coming in to pass Earth around July 12th, the closest to Earth. We have a lot of things that I think in astrology we can understand with, but I think we have way more that's going to be happening out in space, happening out in our solar system and beyond our solar system. That's going to be that X factor that's going to start bringing in new things for us to bring as astrologers to try and define the rulership of or whatever, because I think that we're coming to X factor points where something has to come in to move this kind of stagnation and extreme transformation that we're all going through. But there's got to be something that's going to bring us together and move us along, even if it could be a little bit crazy. I think it's an important thing to pay attention to, and for people to not be afraid and realize we have so many amazing people in our lives that we can, break bread with right now and get out of a lot of the political divisiveness that we've been through the Capricorn stuff, and really find a way for us to really define and find what humanity is.
Yay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes. And it's so true because, I know, again, I know for some of you, what does all this mean? Jupiter and Capricorn and Pluto and these squares and all of this. But take a breath, have a little patience. We can tune into it. And when we do, and you really start to see it, it's kind of like really mind-boggling. And I think you'll really appreciate knowing about it. I heard something I read just this morning, and it actually was out of a book, and it was very positive, and I'd like to share it with you if I may. It's actually from Dan Brown's book, Origins, which I haven't read, but I just happened to come across this quote from it, one of Barbara's things. And it says, "We are now perched on a strange cusp in history, a time when the world feels like it's been turned upside down and nothing is quite as we imagined. But uncertainty is always a precursor to sweeping change. Transformation is always preceded by upheaval and fear. I urge you to place your faith in the human capacity for creativity and love, because these two forces, when combined, possess the power to illuminate any darkness. And just some of the things that you were saying really, David, really kind of brought that up for me. And I just, when I read that, it was like, yes, this is what people just really do. There's so much positivity out there. And of course, the media and everything always focuses on what isn't positive. But this is really a time for us to find who we are. Who really are we? You know, we came into a culture, that cult that taught us that we are this and we have to do this and this is what life is about. But actually, we're starting to really discover who we are. And that's really pretty exciting. Molly, how are you doing there?
Great. I love what you just said, Shima, because I think that what we're seeing, big astrological transits, really rare. This is all very rare. Is how capable we are, how strong we are, how we have fortitude to keep going through these shifts, to be adaptable, but to also get to more of the core, what we're capable of, and how we're leveling so many things that no longer serve us, and go of things that we don't have to continue. And I see this at the personal level, the community level, the collective level. And I feel like that's why we're here. And there's so many people that I interact with who identify as light workers and starseeds, and you hold different frequencies. And so just to get more metaphysical, it's like, well, we're here to change the vibe on the planet, to destroy or remove things that don't serve humanity. And that's a change that really gets us at our core. It goes into our primal needs of safety and security. But then we also see how much stronger we are, how we're able to make these changes, and what we're basically setting up for like a long-term trajectory. And that's what it feels like. Like there's things that we're taking down, we're removing, they're no longer needed, but we're setting up something new that we're co-creating that I think is going to be much later in the decade. But that helps to understand what these big cycles are about and how we are the ones who have power. We have more power we've ever realized. This is a lifetime when we get to really put that into motion. So I guess that's kind of like an overarching theme that I'm seeing here, is that, you know, we're understanding more of who we are individually and why it's important to remain in your truth, but also allow that to be questioned, to look at what you've assumed about yourself, because the energies are going to keep coming. They're going to keep pushing us into new places. But we can embrace that and see it as powerful growth instead of seeing it as something happening to us or against us. So I feel like this is something where humanity can really be reclaiming, you know, who you are, but at a core level, and also balance, like more balanced in the men and the feminine, in the heart and the mind and the healthy ego. So I feel like there's beautiful advancements that we've had to ride through to get to this point, and we'll keep riding it.
Yes, I have a lot of faith in humanity. And I really do believe that this is why we all came. I mean, it seemed like for a while, things were just kind of like flatline, just kind of stagnant. It was like, you know, kind of, is that all there is type of reality. And suddenly it's kind of like, okay, the universe turned up the flame, and it was like, okay, here we are, we're really cooking. So, it's very, very exciting and very, you know, it's about going deep. And that's why I think this is really something that everyone really can benefit from, no matter astrology. You know, sometimes I know it stops people. They hear that word and they just kind of like immediately turn off. And if there's just kind of like a way to get people past that, and that's kind of what I'm hoping that we can do. Of course, we need to add some of the astrology, because that's the key here. That's written in the heavens. You know, I think I said that in one of my things when I was talking about this, was suddenly it was like, you know, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. You know, I was brought up Catholic, 9 years in Catholic school, and yet there's like this fear but as it is above, so it shall be below. And as above, so below. It's everywhere, and those that have eye. So we're trying to like help open the door because we knocked and and the door was answered for us. It feels like to me. Rick, there you are. Let's have
so some of you may know that I have an Aries sun square a Cancer moon, and I so want to go first, but I do so much better when I go last. Wow. I mean, I made notes. I think I have something to say on. Everyone said such cool things, and I just kind of want to go down my list really quickly and just make a couple of comments on some of the things that other people have said. Heather, the whole idea of the beginning of the age of Aquarius. The one thing that I would add to that, my perception, obviously everybody believes what they believe, is that in a cycle that is so large, there's no way of really gauging the exactness of the beginning. I am told that microwaves in a wire don't go down a wire like most electromagnetic currents, because they're so tiny, they just bounce around. They don't know what way to go. In other words, we're in a cycle that's so large, to pick a spot and to say that the age of Aquarius, began in or will begin. I think astrology shares something very, very basic with practitioners of fundamental religions and modern Western science and modern Western medicine. And that is that although astrology gives us a great deal of additional perspective, we don't know as much as we think we know often. And I'm not saying that in direct to anything that Heather said. I'm saying that, for all we know, the age of Aquarius, began around the crucifixion of Jesus. We don't know. But if it did, then the age of Aquarius is still a couple hundred years off. There is a transition. We are in it. Absolutely unquestionable. Daniel brought up the shadow of Aquarius. Daniel, it's like, not only do I so agree with you, but if there's a one-word response that I have to people who talk about, oh my God, everything's going to be great, it's the age of Aquarius, we're all going to be equal, we're all going to be part of Borg. Anyone who's watched any of the early Star Treks, Borg is Aquarius. You want to talk about the shadow of Aquarius, go watch a Termite Hill. So, enough said, but thank you for that thought, Daniel. And the bifurcation, oh my God, anyone who's ever read Jules Verne's, H.G. Wells, The Time Machine, I mean, the vision was that there would be two different species, and we may be gravitating into that. And certainly the whole concept of posthumanism, transhumanism, Nietzsche, who probably was one of the first minds who realized all that was going on. Very, very powerful stuff. David said something about unification, astrology as a unifier. I totally agree, except most people look at astrology and they don't say what's the same. They go, what's different? You're a Leo, I'm an Aries. We don't say, well, we're both fire signs. We go, you're this and I'm that. And it's the great illusion of astrology that we look at astrology and we see these little aberrant points. 99.9999% of the solar system is vacuous, empty space. Namaste. It's empty. It's the same emptiness in each of us. And yet as astrologers, we look at what makes us different. And so I think that part of the revisioning of astrology is realizing I'm an Aries, fine. My sun is in Aries, but that means at any given moment, I have 11 other ways of templating my local universe. And so I think, again, this whole concept of unification is so important. And part of that is just reaching beyond our egocentric, individualistic point of view to understand that the universe has multiple perspectives. Heather, the Saturn square Uranus, absolutely. For anyone who thinks the third and final Uranus-Saturn square, Saturn-Uranus square on Christmas Eve of 2021 was the end of the game. You know, we're in the midst of this now again, as that orb is becoming smaller and smaller, and it's going to continue to creep into almost within a half a degree by September, October, election day in the United States. Oh my God, I can't go there right now. But this is going to be an intense, and Heather, I think you nailed it. It's the holding on to the old versus the, you know, blowing up everything of the old and going on to the new. And obviously in a square, either extreme does not work. We have to figure out a way to incorporate both planets. Barbara, who isn't here, talked about the Medici's. Marsilio Ficino, who is the court astrologer for 3 generations of Medici's. The time sequencing of what happened then and what happened now is astrologically very familiar, because in 1455 there was a Uranus-Pluto conjunction. That was the invention of the printing press. In 1479 there was a Uranus-Neptune conjunction. Both times Uranus conjoined the planet that was farthest away from the sun at that moment in time, and it did it within a Saturn cycle, within 30 years. We had the same Uranus-Pluto conjunction in 1965-66, when Pluto was farthest from the sun, followed by, in 1994, the Uranus-Neptune conjunction, when Neptune was farthest away from the sun, Pluto was inferior. And that same energy, it like is 2 complete bounces out of normal reality within 1 generation that really, I think, was the setup for what everyone else was talking about, the Uranus-Pluto squares, the 7 times from 2012 to 2015, and everything else that's gone on since. Tom talking about losing hope. My Buddhist friends remind me that hope is not necessarily a good thing. Faith may be better, because hope projects a solution into the future. I don't have to do anything today if I hope it's going to get better tomorrow. But yes, I mean, that whole idea of not losing that sense of power, because loss of hope in some ways is a loss of power. And Molly, I think you said it all when you said, well, Molly disappeared. I assume you're there somewhere. We can turn on a dime. No, you're back. Hi. What David said about the X factor, we forget that because of the nature of digital reality, that we can, in fact, turn the entire ship around, in a moment. In one flash awareness of everyone sharing some experience, whatever that X factor may be. I don't know, David, but I'm with you and I'm waiting. And when that happens, it'll rattle all of us. It doesn't matter what our individual beliefs are. One last closing comment, though, about this panel, which I'm absolutely thrilled to be on, and can't wait to hear each and every one of you dig into your stuff deeper, because you each bring such cool stuff to this. And that is that I look at us, and we're basically 7 older, maybe Molly not as old, but we're 7 older white people, and there's something wrong with that. I'm just mentioning that in passing, just because it's changing, and it's changing so fast, and we don't run this isn't the only show in town. And in fact, that inclusivity, whether it's ethnic inclusivity or gender inclusivity, is really important. And it's important for astrology, because if you have a planet that's not expressing, that planet's going to be the problem planet in your chart. That's it for now.
All right. Thank you, Rick. You always are
Wow.
good at bringing it all together like that.
Wow, Rick, every one of you have been so profound. I'm actually gonna have to go back and take notes because it's advanced. It's really interesting, and you're hitting on some of the problems of today's life. So really excited. We want to take a moment, Shima and I, to show everyone how you can continue. I see all these comments in the chat room. I see how you're excited. These are your favorite astrologers in the entire planet. And it is really exciting. And I want to show you what's going to come up. This is what we're offering. This is what we're going to follow up with.
Thank you, Joan.
Yes. You want to talk about it, Shima? And I'll scroll down.
Okay, well, the next 7 weeks, starting next week with Molly McCord, we are really we're going to dive deep. It's going to give you an opportunity to actually each person is going to share a little bit about what they're going to talk about. And I think that is really the best way, but just to kind of like get a sense of the depth and the quality of what's being shared here. And I know on the Portal to Ascension portal that there's a lot of ancient aliens and disclosure and a lot of really fabulous information. And my experience is that astrology, and as a co-founder of Conscious Life Expo and the original program director for it, I am like so wanting these days. It's just been coming up for me so strong to really merge astrology with all of the things that everyone is into who are looking at ancient archaeology and different cycles. And I know Neil just did a thing on the the Indus Valley, and let's see, scroll down a little bit more, Joan. There, keep going. Anyway, it's all so interrelated that I just love it, and I want people to know that about astrology. So we created this at a very affordable $144, which is, it's just kind of the least I could put it out there for. I got a few choices and let's go here. And it's a great price for astrology, right? $12.12. And so I hope that you can join us, because then you get to like have each one of these luminaries to share their information with you whenever and wherever you want it. And that is my pleasure. And I wanted to touch on a couple
Can I say one other thing?
Yes.
I want to just mention, guys, you can 24/7 access. So a day or so after the event, in fact, you will all get, if you registered for this event, you will get a link to watch it at home 24/7. It's up forever. But also for the 7-week series, that will be up in its own portal on Portal to Ascension. You can always access it. You will have 24/7. So if you're like me and you need to see it several times, you'll have that. That was a good thing to say, Shima.
That was very good. Thank you, Joan. I appreciate it very much. And thanks for popping in and letting us know. We're very happy. I wanted to say something. And I think you kind of like, David mentioned it, and then Rick sort of like hit on it, was having to do with the unification and in a chart. And for myself, one of the things that I love to do when I look at a chart, and I look at somebody's chart and, you're this is conjunct. This is where we connect. And it's so exciting. And like David and I did that. And we were on the phone one day and we were just kind of like, this is actually when I thought I had a different birth time. And so it changed my ascendant. But my lunar nodes, which are very important, they're a 19-year cycle, and they're not a planet, but we'll find out more. I think Heather's going to speak more about the nodes in her talk, and you'll find out about what they are and why they're so important. And they're kind of like connected to the eclipses and to the solstices. But David and I have the exact same north node. It's like a couple of minutes, not even degrees. There's 30 degrees and then there's 60 minutes. He and I have just a couple of minutes. It's different cycles, but there's that connection. And it's so palpable. It's just really quite amazing. So I look at that whenever I look at somebody's chart. I'm looking for like, how can we connect? And, and there's always differences. Thank God there's differences, right? Otherwise we would just be, of course, we are in our own world, so to speak, but it's nice to have the contrast. Contrast is a very important thing. And even with what's going on the planet, hopefully it's an opportunity for us to see more of that beauty of who we are, who we can be, how we can connect. That's my ultimate thing. I am definitely a flower child for back then and still to today. So love, Shima means love, and here you are. So more love, Shima Moore. Anyway, what else? I wanted to touch on also, Rick, you mentioned the Uranus Pluto square of 1455, then again 1965.
Uranus Pluto conjunction.
Conjunction, thank you. Conjunction.
The square was 2012 to 2015, just like the square after the one in 1455 was in the 1490s. That's the age of exploration. 1492, Uranus Pluto square, Columbus sailed the ocean blue to basically claim a land that was doing just fine without him.
It certainly was. And that's also very exciting to find out about the earlier civilizations. But I just wanted to touch on that because at the expo we had we had a premiere for the Changing of the Gods, which is based on that particular cycle of of that Pluto Uranus Pluto conjunction. And I know for me, those were, I was oblivious to a lot of this back then, but it was an interesting overview of what was going on then and what's going on now. And again, if you like history, astrology is like the penultimate exploration of that. And the outer planets. So, for many, many years, when we didn't have telescopes, all we had were 7 planets. And so now we have the outer planets as well. Not all astrology, the astrology in India doesn't use them. And Daniel and the shamanic astrology mystery school really focuses on the difference between the constellations and the signs. And I know it is such a confusing thing for people because people tend to call them both by the same name, and they're not the same at all. So Daniel, I saw your hand up. I didn't know if you wanted to touch on something, but I just thought that was definitely something that people needed to know a bit about, perhaps.
Oh, you would like me to come? Sure. The comment I was going to make, though, was to follow up on what Rick said.
Thank you.
Regarding that time in the late 1400s. I always thought it was amazing that Columbus sailed in his Pluto square Pluto. I mean, that's another kind of Pluto perihelion time period like we've just been through. Those great great navigators were all like in a Plutonian time, and don't we know it? But the other thing, is it all right if I comment about the signs and constellations?
Yes.
Want me to do that?
Yes.
It's in a lot of research on this, that I believe that when the Hellenistic culture began to notice that the constellations were showing up at the wrong time, it was absolutely essential that they had to create a different frame of reference, which was the brilliance of the zodiac archetype itself. And actually in Ptolemy's school, they knew there were both happening. I mean, one of the questions in Ptolemy's school was, what is the proportion by which the constellation informs the sign? So one of the things that we've worked on in our school is how over each turning of the ages, the different constellational patterns will inform signs. So that the sign Aries had a different meaning 6,000 years ago than it did 4,000 years ago, than it did 2,000 years ago. And this has to be kept to take into account, because otherwise, if we use the traditional meanings from 2,000 years ago, we're not taking into account the shift that's happening from the constellational input that is coming from where the constellations are now relative to the solstices and equinoxes. So that's a really good portion of what we work on, is how the signs evolve based upon the different constellational groups that line up with the signs over long periods of time.
Thank you, Daniel. And so, I know most of us have, if we've engaged in any kind of conversation with somebody who's a Vedic astrologer, a sidereal, oh, how can astrology be correct? We're both correct. It depends on your point of view. And so just know that, for instance, the sun is in Taurus from a sun sign place for me, but oh no, you're actually in Aries. Well, I explored it for a bit, and I'm more comfortable with the Western interpretation. And now that I have a more clear understanding of the relationship between these big constellations that are sometimes way more than 30 degrees, and these 30-degree signs of the zodiac, it puts it really all much more into place. So, and also, Rick, you mentioned something about older white people, and I don't think David fits in that category, or Tom for that matter. I thought we had, but I hear what you're saying, because it's definitely true. We're all kind of, although Daniel, you did a great job. I don't know, your hair is still, you're like my brother. He's never grayed, he never silvered. He's just
1948.
Yay, there you go. Great. All right, well, let's just touch. We have about we don't have that much time. Let's go quickly through what you're going to talk about. Just maybe touch a little bit, a sentence or two, a title and a sentence or two about what you're going to talk about on your upcoming, and we'll be in dialogue as well and conversation, but you'll have the opportunity to focus on your topic. So Molly, you're next week, and I'm so excited, and you're just like that perfect person to kick it all off. And I was just so delighted to get your confirmation to be here. So thank you so much for joining us. And what are we going to talk about?
Thank you, Shima. Well, I'm going to invite everyone to bring their, and we're going to go into the more specifics between your ascendant and your descendant, what that means, what could be on these energies. And this is designed to help you go a little bit more into your own chart to see some things that maybe you didn't see before, because you're going to see maybe what you have been holding or needing or projecting. So we're going to do a nice dance back and forth here, Shima, between the ascendant and the descendant energies, so that people can see more of themselves, not only in ships, but in what they need, what they're seeking, what they're about. So we're going to do that next week. So I hope you guys can join us. It's going to be good. And I haven't taught this anywhere else, so you're going to want to join us.
Great. And so let me ask you this. What if somebody doesn't have their chart, or they don't know their time? Will it still be something that will be able to relate to?
I think that it's best that you want to know your birth time. And if you can't have it by next week, remember there's replays available, and you could come back and watch this episode later. You can always get a free chart on astro.com, on various apps and websites. So you can access a free chart. And if you don't have your birth time, there's even a video I did on 7 tips for finding your birth time. I know that's something that people are always looking for and figuring out, but it's worth investing in finding that birth time, because it just sets up so much in your chart that's important to know. So
thank you. Yes, that's so true. That's so true. I'm often feeling that I want to go into really getting deep into rectification, because I feel like so many people need some help with their birth time, but I haven't quite gotten to that. I've got a smattering of information, like I'm sure we all do, but okay. And then after Molly is David, and David will be on the 13th of July. David, we haven't really had a chance to really talk, but do you have an idea of what you would like to talk about on your episode?
Yeah. On my episode, I'm going to be going into the questions of what is the future of astrology going to be as a mundane astrologer, and all the presentations I've done, all the lectures I've done, whether it's all the history and the connection to the planets of now. But there's a lot of questions about where's astrology going to be going, where's it heading, and a lot of that's connected to humanity in itself. Especially, a lot of people know my hypergate work, and that's what I'm calling my version of astrology that I'm bringing to the world is I'm going to be extending and teaching people what a hypergate is and how we are really going into not only just a new age, but an age of a lot of questions that I'm going to hopefully not only help people try and understand, including my own self together, especially even taking some of John Dee's work that I've been really going deep into, and with the hieroglyphic monad and asking a lot of the questions with the work that he did back then. How do we apply that same understanding into this current moment? Because since 1564 in his work, we really haven't had anybody in astrology start to take the outer planets and some of these things that we're finding out in space and start to wonder, where can we find that sacred symbol of oneness, and where can we find a way for us to really start to move forward with astrology? Because it's really at a place where a lot of people are coming to astrology to find answers, and a lot of the ways that we're doing it are kind of giving the same answer and not the answers that we really need. So it's much more of an open talk, and much more of that we all together as a collective are going to find these answers together, and finding the ways for all of us to find that answer together.
Great. Well, I look forward to that for sure. And just to touch on, there's so many different kinds of astrology charts and things. Tell our audience what a mundane astrologer is.
Well, mundane is a really boring term. I always called it, inclusive astrology, but really what it is taking astrology and looking at the events of the world. Especially, I'm much more of a collective-based astrologer, understanding the collective conscious state of where humanity is and what we're all going through together, and how the astrology is affecting us as a collective, and Earth and the world. It used to be especially just much more based on mundane events, whether it was news stories or stuff that happens, but really we can really take that into much farther reaches. And I feel that that's where people are much more connected to astrology than just looking at their own chart right now. It's one thing to just understand yourself, but I feel like we all are feeling like we all are trying to understand what we're all going through together.
Great. Thank you, David. And Molly, just on a point with that, is that I just wanted to touch on the type of astrology that you would say that you do. I always think of you as an intuitive astrologer, because you were the first person that I ever heard really sort of like really tune in as you're doing your talks and things to guidance that you were getting at that time.
Yes, because what I learned through doing so many different charts through the years is that I would start out with all these notes, things I'd want to discuss or do in a session, but then something would start speaking to me in the chart. And I believe everyone has that capability to tune into where the energy is pulling them, what they're sensing, what they're feeling, more of the messages to understand. So it takes it out of just the typical, we could say like cookbook astrology, and go into like more of, well, what is really speaking to me, or what's energetically calling to me? And that's something we learn to trust, and it isn't mental. So it kind of bridges this energy between your intuition and your mind, but then you can tap into more that maybe you wouldn't access or understand. So that's kind of how I live, but I always, say, go with what works for you, what feels best for you. But I feel like so many people did, and really trusting more of what's speaking to them energetically.
Great. Thank you so much. Yes, because I realize that, a lot of people just think, oh, my astrologer said, or there's this one kind of astrology. And I want people to know that, it's like, what does an elephant look like for blind people? It depends what part of the elephant you're holding on to. Very different. So thank you for that. Heather, you are our third week. Would you like to share what you're going to be sharing with us, and maybe a little bit about your technique?
Well, I just following up on what David was saying a few minutes ago, I loved what he was talking about, and very much my talk will also be looking at really how do we understand more of these larger collective shifts that we're in, and how profound this time of transition and transformation is. And as we can see that larger perspective and understand the shifting of the ages and the meaning of this profound transition and transformation, we can move through it with more faith and more of a sense of higher consciousness rather than getting caught in fear. And I totally agree with what Rick said earlier. There is no set starting point to the age of Aquarius. There are threshold points, and we're in this huge shift. But as we can understand the meaning of the lunar nodes and what they're guiding us into right now, the Saturn Uranus square, it's really helping us. I think one key theme of this time, especially with the nodes, is how do we bring what's in the shadow into the light of consciousness so that we can heal individually and collectively to move into these new forms. I truly believe that if we don't deal with our trauma and the pain from the past and our collective trauma of going through these 12,000 year cycles of transformation and 24,000 year processional cycles of transformation, we will tend to act out the shadow side instead of really claiming the higher consciousness that we're called to move into in this time.
Thank you. Great. And Tom, you are our week 4. So exciting.
And by the way, I need to cut out to another meeting. So thank you, everyone.
All right, sweetheart. Thank you so much for joining us today, Heather. Thank you. We'll see you soon. There we go.
Yeah. So what I'm going to talk about is how it works, but also why it's happening that we relive themes and experiences from multiple lives or past lives. And how to shift it, how to make it less difficult, how to make it more enjoyable. And the deepest version of that is really knowing a lot about your astrology chart, but it's accessible even if you're not so familiar with astrology chart, given things in your life, themes you're living. So my talk will be quite focused on, how to stop tripping over, like the individual, how individuals can stop tripping over their multi-life shoelaces and learn to unwind certain patterns and unwinding beliefs and changing karma. That's a thing that I work on quite a lot, is how teaching people how to change karma and understanding how to process the difficult emotions associated with it. So mine will be, I don't know what the title is quite yet, but something about like, we're all reliving our themes from our past lives and how to make it easier, or something like that.
Great. How to stop that karma. But yes, we kind of like think, and I think that's a thing that people really think again with astrology. They're like, oh, well, it's they're afraid of it because of that.
We have some crummy definitions of karma that put us in fear. And it is not reward and retribution. It's not reward and punishment. And this comes from Hermes or Jehudi, Thoth, Saint Germain, that ascended master. This teaching comes in, and I have 100 of my own stories I've changed by changing my mind about something and dealing with emotional content. Anyway, and many more hundreds from clients all over the world for the last 18 years. So. So it's going to be more individual focused, which will be a little different than some of our friends here too.
Beautiful. Yeah. And you have an evolutionary astrology background, but I know that you combine that with so many other modalities.
Yeah. I mean, for me, and my kind of branding on the evolutionary work is the soul's journey. And so for me, it's like everything leads me just because of how I'm wired and what I'm interested in. When I was a kid, I wanted to know. Well, I thought it was I wanted to know everything. Imagine an 8-year-old thinking that. But it was really I wanted to understand why people did what they did. Good, so when I factor in emotions and other life beliefs and unconscious beliefs and attitudes, it opens up. And so I feel quite happy to be able to be of service in that way.
Yay. Well, we're so delighted to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Great. And Barbara, I think she's going to be talking about really some of the things that are going on now with the Pluto return and the Neptune opposition and like that. And I see I've got to plug in my, sorry, I have to plug in my computer's going to crash on me in just a minute. So, okay, there we go. We're saved. So I'm not entirely sure. I couldn't find my notes on our conversation. So, Daniel is going to be our speaking with us the 6th week. So Daniel, what are you?
Oh, I just had to actually follow up on one thing that Tom brought up, and that's really a rather major feature of our work in our school, which is this absolute misuse of the understanding of karma, which most of the karma understanding is Christianized Calvinistic karma. And it's absolutely completely different than what India said about karma. Unfathomable are the ways of karma. So we're really trying to get beyond that. And I'm so happy that so many on the panel I think we're in agreement about that. Shima, when we talked about what it is that I would be speaking about, you shared with me about, what so many of the others are talking about, like the larger cycles and, US chart and the turning of the ages and so on. Most of my work is founded on all of that. But I decided, because that's going to be touched upon by so many of the other speakers, to come up with something that was a bit more useful and practical for the navigation of these times. And so there's one of the main features of our paradigm, which is to look at the astrological cycles that we go through, both collectively and personally, as cycles of initiation. And we allocate certain planetary initiations to the upper world, some to the middle world, and some to the lower world or the underworld. So this is sort of a concept borrowed from Shamanism 101. So that each initiatory framework has an important contribution, trying to totally get away from this is a good one or a bad one, or too bad for you, you're going to be in a Saturn or Pluto or something like that. So we're allocating the different initiatory processes to these 3 worlds. And then our primary insight is that in order to navigate these extraordinary times, and I mean, good grief, if you have to take seriously that there are 6 timelines converging, and I can't see how you can ignore that, then what would be the most useful way of dealing with it? So we suggest a 3 worlds approach, meaning to look at anything that's happening from 3 worlds simultaneously. So on one hand, from the celestial perspective, all is well. The universe is unfolding as it should. The great mystery has it well in hand. Gaia has it well in hand. Then there's the underworld perspective. So much needs to be composted. Everything going into galactic center. Basically, it's a whole turning over. The way that in India they say is that when Shakti has been so badly damaged, then Shiva must destroy her so that you can have actually a new creation. So that's the underworld expression of it, which is basically that we have to let go entirely of who we take ourselves to be. And then the middle world is also being honest about what's actually happening. Looking at the reality of what's happening on the planet, what's happening politically, what's happening environmentally, all the rest of it. And while I'm totally into idealism and hope, if you don't face the shadow and bring the underworld material in, then it's just hopium, So we actually embrace all 3 worlds. It's not easy. And to be able to hold them all at the same time. Then it's neither negative or it's not, spiritual bypass. It's not just lost in the middle world. It's all 3 simultaneously. So that'll be what I discuss, and it'll be looking at outer planet transits and timeline cycles. It'll cover Uranus and Neptune as the upper world, and Saturn and Jupiter and the nodes of the middle world, and Chiron and Pluto as underworld allocated initiations. So that's what I'm planning on sharing with all of you. Yeah.
Great. And I so look forward to that. And, just so much of the shamanic astrology mystery school approach is so much of the archetype of the 12 feminine, 12 masculine. It's just a very unique, perceptive view of things. And so
Well,
I
yeah,
just love that.
yes, you were asking about, so like what type of astrology or style of astrology. So it's really a union of tropical or directional zodiac with the infusion of the constellational mysteries. And then I use an approach which uses a very different view of the moon and the ascendant. So basically, it's very much oriented toward the directional flow of the soul. In fact, what I learned in the early 70s was the type of astrology that we're using is what in the 60s and 50s, those astrologers believed was the next life chart. When in fact, our view is that actually this is the life we get to be able to fulfill the soul's purpose. We don't have to wait to some future time period in order to do it. So the clues are on the chart for what your life purpose is. As Rajar put it, if you do not fulfill your dharma, there's a hole in the universe where you were intended to be, which is really a beautiful expression, actually.
Yes.
I'm a total Rajarian philosophically.
Great. And yes, and he's, yes, I know many of our astrologers have touched on his work through the years. It's, you can't, yeah, it's like everywhere. So we so appreciate him for sure. Such a Renaissance man he was, wasn't he? And number 7, our final week is going to be with Rick Levine, Rick Merlin Levine.
I'm just going to repeat the best one-liners from the previous 6 talks. Yeah, the title that I picked was Navigating Through Time. And it's really my eclectic and yet very traditional in many ways view of how we can use astrology to improve our lives. And I'm going to be coming at this from a perspective of why is astrology growing so rapidly, interest in astrology these days? What's the technological component of it? And I totally, appreciate, following Daniel, because I've been to astrology. I spoke at a conference in Kolkata several years ago. And my talk was during a lunar eclipse that was visible. And the room was mostly East Indian Indians. And they had no idea that there was an eclipse going on in that moment. Partly because it's dangerous to go out under an eclipse. I mean, but the point is that we moderners have, and I am a modernist, have become so separated from nature that we forget that there is a visceral astrological connection experience that astrologers, when they go up into most astrology conferences, tend to be, throat chakra and up, and that's it. And that's not what happens though when you're going through a process, or as Daniel would call it, an initiation, or even being out in the night sky and experiencing it. So I'm going to be looking at the question of how does the new cosmology support astrological perspective? Come from a little bit of historical science and religion, because it's interesting that astrology is a rare thing that modern science and ancient religion both gang up on and say, we got to exorcise this wart off the face of the planet because it is unreligious and unscientific. And there's something there that's very important. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a science that embraces astrology. And I'm certainly not saying that many of the most religious people in history have been astrologers or interested in astrology too, but I'm going to be looking at this from that perspective, and how, again, it comes back to this moment in time that we're all talking about. How is this moment in time special? And I wanted to read this before. It's just a couple of lines. I'm going to close with this. This is from a song written on an album called "Standing in the Breach" by Jackson Browne a few years ago after the Haiti earthquake. And the title of the song is "If I Could Be Anywhere." And he closes the song with, "The world's going to shake itself free of our greed somehow. And the world can't take it. That you can see. If the oceans don't make it, neither will we. The world's going to shake itself all the way free somehow. If I could be anywhere, if I could be anywhere in time, if I could be anywhere and change the outcome, it would have to be now."
Great. Yes. Yes. And isn't that it?
Well, it's Dzogchen Buddhism too.
Yeah.
The only moment we ever have, it's not working toward enlightenment, as Daniel said, in the next lifetime or tomorrow. If I do my yoga and my practices yesterday and today and tomorrow, well, then maybe next Tuesday I'll be enlightened. No, it doesn't work that way. Enlightenment only happens. Awareness is the only thing we can change. And that's why astrology is so valuable. When we change our awareness, we change everything. And that's what everyone has spoken to. I'm just rephrasing it differently. It's about expanding our awareness so that we can see what we didn't see before. So then we have more choices.
That's great. Thank you, Rick. And maybe, we have a few minutes left, and that might be a wonderful place to go with, if you could kind of like put astrology, a definition of why astrology is so amazing, or what is the thing about astrology? I mean, Daniel, you kind of mentioned it with Rujar. If you don't live who you are, I'm totally paraphrasing it, but there's a hole in the universe if you don't live to your destiny. And that's it. We are all here to live our destiny, and I feel like I've always been. That's always been something that's been very important to me, and people around me have said, "What are you talking about? The purpose of life? Just get a job and get married, and and there's nothing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the more I learn my chart, the more I see that I've done that, and the more I see that I'm more on my path in alignment with who I am than I've ever been. And I'm the happiest that I've ever been. And it's just kind of, that's what I love about, that's one of the things I love about astrology. It can really kind of help you to, and unfortunately, and I've been a writer since a North Node in Gemini, and I've been a writer since I'm 10 years old. I started writing poetry, and I have journals back for decades and decades. So when I learn something new in astrology, I just go through my timeline or my journal, and I can actually do back to the future type of thing and really see what was I thinking and feeling at that time. So I always recommend to people, if you've never kept a journal, it doesn't have to, I started with Dear Diary as a little girl. Dear Diary, today I saw so-and-so, but it doesn't really matter. Just kind of, you might find that it's a helpful thing to just see your cycles. It's a very exciting world when everything kind of falls into place and it's not just a random universe. Daniel. Yes. I can't hear you, honey. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Just a quote on what we've been talking about, this is not from Rujar. It's the quote that my second book leads off with. It's from the Bhagavad Gita.
Yes.
which I believe covers our approach to astrology just perfectly. It is better to do one's own dharma, duty, however defective it may be, than to follow the dharma of another, however well that one may perform it. It is better to die doing one's own dharma, for to do the dharma of another is fraught with danger. Those who do their own dharma as their nature reveals it never sin. And as is best said, probably from a modern context, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
Oh, yes, I love that. That's just really great. So we just have a couple of minutes here. David, yes.
I love that quote, and I think especially it's a time where we all need to be able to express ourselves, especially as astrologers. We've always had a big stigma over the astrology community is looked at as, you know, weirdos, psychos, or devils even. And there's a lot of movements right now that are trying to express themselves. And I've been telling people recently, like, don't start throwing stigma on them, because it comes back, always back at us. You know, this is a time where I think it is all about individually. We all play out our dharma and we live our dharma, but we also have to understand others that are living theirs too. And I think that it's very important right now. It's going to be a very weird time for us because there's so much divisiveness, and there's a lot of people out there saying that there's only one way to be. And I think that goes well with that quote that Daniel just put, like, just focus on your own dharma and allow people to live theirs too. And that's going to be tricky, but I think that if we can, as astrologers, start to help people see beyond just the celestial, but the super celestial, and to see, you know, what's even happening here in the terrestrial, we can really help people start to see a way to really allow people to come together. And as Rick was saying, getting back to nature and this earth, I think, is a very important thing. But also in our, you know, there's a lot of people who might understand a lot about nature, as we say, from earth, but in alchemy, there's so many different natures, from human nature to the divine nature. You know, these are definitely a lot of the fragmentations of a lot of these things that we're going through, that we're going to have to find a way to learn to accept each other, and learn to also, I think, as astrologers, you know, make sure as astrologers that we don't stigmatize as we've been stigmatized for thousands of years.
Thank you for that. Yes, beautiful. Okay. Molly, any parting words, darling?
Oh, and I've really appreciated what everyone has shared here. And I feel like this is a beautiful, like, congregation of not only wisdom and ancient wisdom and so many years of experience, but that there's so much too that we're opening up, moving into, and to stand the beauty of that, the excitement of that, to not let how hard times have been to get to you too much, you know, to look at how, you know, we are made for these times, and that we're really discovering more of what we're able to do during these energies, and that it is about accepting our differences. And I don't mean that as like a trite phrase, but just saying that that's what's so beautiful. And that's Aquarius as well. It's like our individual energy signatures, our individual frequencies are needed, and each one matters, and beauty of time too. So I feel like that's where we're expanding into. There's a lot of growth and potential there. And I just think it's really exciting that we have so many people at a very high level of consciousness, more than ever before. So it's a beautiful time.
Yes, it is. And it's wonderful to have you here. Great. Tom, any final words?
I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to getting some teaching out there. So thank you.
Yay. And I want to invite you all to listen to each other, you know, because, you know, I could just kind of like see the, you know, it's just like you all have such wonderful wisdom to share with each other, and with just to share. And I so appreciate it. I want to thank you all. And I want to thank all of our audience for coming and being with us. And invite you all to come back and take advantage of the whole 7-episode, 7-week series, Cosmic Revelations, Astrology, You in the Universe. And we're going to have a wonderful time. I know there have been some questions. I'll take a look at the questions and I'll see if perhaps they're something that we can answer in the series itself, perhaps with each individual astrologer. I'm not sure. I haven't had a chance to really look at them, but we'll see about that. During the episodes, we may have some wonderful extra little goodies for you. And but just being here, just partaking of the insights of these 7 best of the best astrologers' wisdom through decades of time in just about every case here. So thank you all for joining us.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Guys, on behalf of Portal to Ascension, we really want to welcome you all and say thank you for joining us. And we hope we see you again. We hope you definitely take advantage of the 7-week series. You'll be able to access that, but not only just access the astrology, there's thousands of programs being offered by Portal to Ascension over the last few years on every subject of waking up, of consciousness, of past lives, of transformation, of karma, of India, past, present, and future. And I think you guys would love to take advantage of that too. So I encourage you that. And we're just so grateful. Shima, you did. Okay, you guys, first of all, and Molly, you did a fantastic job. I was really profoundly blown away. And I noticed we did have a question about, will we be advanced or easy? Is this for beginners? Can other people understand it? That was one of the questions, actually. Do you have to be an advanced student to come to this event?
Oh, are you asking us as a group? Oh, okay. Well, I would
take
say
1 second and answer that question for our audience, and then we can let you go. But can anyone join in and learn and dig in, novice to advanced?
Well, let me say this. I'm going to listen to all of the other talks because I know I have something to learn from each and every panelist. And that's all I can say. Take what you need to from that.
Exactly.
That's really good. I liked how you like you had a question for everyone and you took notes. I think that I'm going to learn that technique for panels. That was actually really well done, Rick, for that. And each of you were really well done. Shima, you were the best. So any last minute comments, or shall we just say we'll see you all next Wednesday?
We're going to see you all next Wednesday. And whether you're a newbie or whether you are advanced, you're going to learn things. You're going to walk away with new insights and motivation, and your world is going to burst open. I have one final thing I would like to do, which is a little blessing that I do at the end of Panurhythmy. And it's basically taking all that energy and bringing it around and making a little wish. May divine love, peace, and joy live in our hearts forever. And that's really it. May divine love, peace, and joy live in our hearts forever. One more time for the 3 worlds, Daniel. For may divine love, peace, and joy live in our hearts forever.
So it is.
And so
right,
it is.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all.
We'll see you
Love
all next week.
Bye-bye. See you soon. See you next
And
week,
don't
Molly.
forget, you can see it on YouTube and you'll see it.
Share it with your
All right,
friends.
Share it with your people.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.